This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, where we discuss all the news in the world of sports. My name is Ben.
And I'm Anthony.
We're back here on a Wednesday, and we have some breaking news into the show to start with. This went down literally maybe like 25 minutes ago. Brandon Marshall, who was recently released by the New York Jets, he has a new team, but he's not leaving the city. I mean, guess you can say nor the stadium.
Right.
Brandon Marshall has signed a 2-year, $12 million deal to stay in New York with the New York Giants. So when I read this, kind of surprised because everyone is literally linking Brandon Marshall to the New England Patriots. But he decided to go elsewhere. He is staying in New York with the Giants. And honestly, I guess you can say this is a match made in heaven. You already have Odell Beckham, who's one of the best wide receivers in the game. You have Sterling Shepard, who had a good rookie season. And now you throw in Brandon Marshall, who is 32 years old, had one of his worst seasons of his career last year. But I think that is all due in part to because he didn't have a quarterback, simply put.
Yeah, that helps.
So now you throw in Brandon Marshall, and to me, you're basically swapping Victor Cruz of last season for Brandon Marshall because Cruz is the free agent. You bring in Brandon Marshall. Cruz last year made $5.3 million, and Brandon Marshall's making $6 million. So it's basically a $700,000 upgrade from Cruz to Marshall, which is honestly worth a lot more than what that money would entail.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at the production that he had last year. He wasn't, talking to Victor Cruz specifically, he wasn't what he was basically when he broke into the league in 2011. Basically, ever since then, he wasn't the same guy. And yeah, you could say the same thing with Brandon Marshall, but the problem, like you said, with Marshall's quarterback situation was name me a good quarterback that he had. I mean, it's not like Fitzpatrick was good 2 years ago, but he at least made it work to the tune of 1,500 yards. Maybe you can just say last year was a down year and everything else like that, and he's always been a guy that if you throw the ball to him, he's going to catch it. You know, last year, I guess notwithstanding, but, you know, in the years before that, if you threw him the ball, whether he had Cutler or whether he had Chad Henne in Miami or whether whoever was throwing to him, he would catch the ball if you throw it to him. So now you have that situation. You have Odell Beckham, who, I mean, we've seen catch everything around him. So you have a situation now with Eli Manning where he's got some good wide receivers to throw to. It looks like he's going to get, you know, somewhere probably around 5,000 yards, I say, considering all the talent he has around him. Now, one thing we talked about too, running game, not exactly as tightened up as the receiving situation, so at least they'll be able to throw the ball. It's just they need to find someone else now. Maybe Paul Perkins can be that guy, but they need to find somebody as far as the running back goes that can get you some kind of production, so that way you take a little bit of pressure off of Manning and Cruz and Beckham and everyone like that.
Maybe they're not even done. I mean, you saw what the Giants did last year. They spent all that money on defense, and that really panned out. Their defense at the end of the season was really one of the best, including their secondary. But, I mean, maybe they're not done. You still look at maybe a guy like Adrian Peterson. He's been linked to the Giants even before Brandon Marshall signed here with the Giants. So it is a possibility. Paul Perkins was kind of up and down at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you have Rashad Jennings, a free agent. He's not going to be back. So you do have a void there. Maybe you look at draft, end of the first round, you're maybe looking at a guy like Christian McCaffrey. I would imagine Dalvin Cook and Leonard Fournette would be gone by there. Mm-hmm. But with Marshall, I mean, like you said, this is a match made in heaven. Last season, 788 yards, 3 touchdowns on 59 catches. But 2 years ago, 109 catches, 1,502 yards, and an NFL-leading 14 touchdowns. So the production is still there. He's a physical, strong receiver that's going to be phenomenal come red zone time. And for Manning, they're just getting him another target, like you said. So it's a perfect scenario. And it's really just for the Giants needing to solve an issue with that running game, maybe get some more offensive linemen, and I think they'll be set because that defense is really, really good. They franchise tagged Jason Pierre-Paul, so he's going to be back. Mm-hmm. He was injured at the end of the season last year. He'll probably make an impact if he stays healthy. And, I mean, as far as passing the game, you got to say this is already one of the best receiving cores in the league now with the addition of Brandon Marshall. So it's honestly just a match made in heaven. So this deal cannot be official until tomorrow because free agency officially starts tomorrow, although right now it's called, I love the name of this. It's called literally the legally tampering period. Like, you can legally tamper. That just sounds like terrible. It's an oxymoron.
It just basically means like, yeah, go talk to whoever you want. That's fine.
So you can basically do whatever you want and then make every deal official come March 9th, which is tomorrow. So, I mean, Brandon Marshall technically isn't even released yet by the Jets, and he's already a member of the Giants. So, anyway, so that deal will be official tomorrow. We have a couple more deals that have already been done. Jack Doyle signed a 3-year, $19 million deal to stay with the Indianapolis Colts. He was a decent tight end near the goal line for them last year. And then there's really just a lot of rumors going around. I mean, you have a lot of guys potentially being traded, potentially being released, going elsewhere. It all starts with Tony Romo. We don't really have any idea about that yet. The quarterbacks seem to go like crazy. Mike Glennon, it looks like he might be getting somewhere around like $15 million for a guy that didn't even play last year. I mean, sounds pretty crazy to me. But
dude, hope, man, I swear. Like, if with a quarterback, it's just like you hope he's good. And it's like, okay, you just throw money at him, hopefully that he's going to be good. And that, when has that worked, honestly? Just throwing money at a quarterback, basically praying that it's going to work out.
I'm literally going to tell you it has never worked.
Like, you can say, like, there's been backups, like Matt Hasselbeck was a backup to Brett Favre, right? I think even Warner was too at some point. Like,
yeah, he backed up Trent Green, and then Green got injured, and then obviously see Kurt Warner being in the Hall of Fame now.
Right, like you can say those things, and that's fine, but then also you can go with recent examples. You can say Matt Flynn, Osweiler, Like, there's been situations recently where you take a quarterback because he was a backup to the guy, right? Matt Flynn was a backup to Aaron Rodgers. Osweiler was a backup to Peyton Manning. Like, you assume just because they can't get a job because the guy in front of him is so good, it's like, oh, well, maybe he's still talented. He just can't get his shot because he's not going to obviously leapfrog past the Hall of Fame quarterback. But that's not even the case with Glennon. Like, he can't vault over a number 1 overall pick and Jameis Winston. That's fine, but I mean, he's been in the league for a minute,
and he's played. It's not like he's been an unproven guy who got a little bit of playing time. He played over a full season in the NFL already the last 3-4 years he's been in the league. So you kind of have an idea with what he's going to do. But for what teams are maybe looking at maybe being like a bridge guy for a couple of years, are you going to give him $15 million? Like, for me, the answer is
well, that's the thing. You said he's going to be like a bridge guy. It's like, okay, so a bridge guy basically means you're going to hold him in place for like 2 or 3 years, and then hopefully you draft a quarterback in the first round or you find one in the free agency or whatever. Well, okay, you're going to give him $15 million to be a bridge guy? That's a really nice bridge. That is some Golden Gate Bridge kind of stuff right there. Like, I don't understand how that works out. Like, you don't got to spend $15 million on him. You could spend $8 million on Tyrod Taylor or something like that or something. Like, I don't understand the 15 for that. That's weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I would do that, but it's going to happen to at least one team. I know a lot of people are rumoring him to maybe like Chicago.
Right.
They obviously have the number 3 pick in the NFL draft. If they want to waste a top 5 pick on a quarterback, I'm not going to say waste, but if they want to use their top 5 pick on a quarterback, then they're going to be saving a lot of money compared to $15 million for Glennon. But it's kind of up in the air. A team like Chicago, they can use literally everything. So, I mean, do you want to maybe get a little more value and maybe look free agent market? Because free agency is kind of weird. I mean, a lot of the really bad teams this year have the money. The Bears, the Browns, the 49ers. But you see a guy like Brandon Marshall, he took $12 million over 2 years.
Yeah.
He could have taken a lot more money to go elsewhere. But he's like, I think I kind of want to win, so I'm going to take a cut to be on a better team.
We always see that thing with, like, basically whoever the big name free agent is, right? And Marshall necessarily wasn't the big name free agent. He was a big enough name, but he wasn't, like, the massive free agent. Like, you've seen, what was it, Mario Williams, who went to Buffalo. They basically, like, kidnapped him in Buffalo and made him stay there and gave him all that money. You get Ndamukong Suh. Got all that money from Miami. Like, you get these things, Hainsworth, when he went to, I think it was Washington from Tennessee, like, when he went to Washington, he got all that money. Like, they basically just have, like, the big main guy, and it's just like, okay, we're going to give you all this money just off of hope. And with the Bears, the number 3 overall pick, okay, so if you're number 3, you're basically outside of the realm of getting the top quarterback, because as much as we want to say, oh, Myles Garrett's going to be the number 1 overall pick, probably not, because some team's going to want a quarterback and they're going to want to trade up to get him and stuff like that. Like, that's kind of how the whole draft works. Like, oh, I want a quarterback. You trade up to, like, the number 1 or number 2 overall pick to do that. That's how the last few drafts of work, whether it's been successful or not. That's kind of how it goes. But if you're the Bears, you're kind of outside of that top, 1 or 2 pick. And this year, it's not even the draft where you have the good quarterbacks, right? You have maybe Trubisky, who's good over in North Carolina. But if you wait,
that's Mitchell Trubisky to you now.
Oh, that's right. It is Mitchell. That's what he wants to be called. That's fine. I don't care. Mitch. Whatever.
I was talking about this, and I was kind of laughing. I was like, so if Mitchell Trubisky's not a great quarterback, that's Mitch Trubisky playing. I'm Mitchell Trubisky. Kind of like the DirecTV commercials.
Right.
Hi, I'm Mitch Trubisky, and I have DirecTV, and I'm Mitchell Trubisky, and I have cable. I thought it was something really, dude, come on.
That is kind of a weird thing. I want to be called. Who wants to be called Mitchell? I never really knew anyone that was called Mitchell, all the way.
A first name?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know anyone, but
the
anyways, go on with what
Well, no, but I was saying because, you have him, and he's the only one that we really, think might be good. Watson could be good, but Watson's not allegedly in, the top 5 picks, right? He's allegedly going to be, later in the draft. But next year, you got Sam Darnold out of USC, you got Rosen in UCLA, you got Browning in Washington. You got all these quarterbacks that are coming out that at least have a lot of hype around them, right? So maybe you wait a year, but if you take Glennon, that's not exactly going to be a year and done. That's going to be 2-3 years and done, and then you're going to have a couple of, weird things if you still have Mike Glennon, but then you draft Sam Darnold or something like that. So the Jets, not the Jets, the Bears are kind of in the spot where you just take a bridge for somebody if you want to get a good quarterback next year. Maybe just have an average quarterback, grab some defensive parts, and just kind of wait a year and get a good quarterback later.
That's definitely what I would do. I mean, I said it on Monday. If I had to, because I was talking about the combine, I said if I had to draft any quarterback coming out, I would take Watson just because he's a proven winner.
Right.
Beating Alabama last year in the title game, getting so close the year before that. I mean, I'm not really sold on any of these guys, but if I was dead set on taking one, I would take Watson.
Sure.
But next year, as you mentioned, the quarterback draft class is going to be loaded. So I would definitely wait a year. I mean, for these teams that are already in that rebuilding mode, I mean, San Francisco totally scrapped everything. They're starting fresh. The Browns scrapped everything. They're starting fresh. And now you have the Jets as that next mold. They got rid of Revis, Mangold, and Brandon Marshall. So they're totally scrapping everything and starting fresh. So, I mean, what's one more year of being terrible to get a chance of being a lot better next year?
Right.
So I think that's what I would do. But, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. As far as free agency goes, like I said, it starts tomorrow. We do have a couple more quick rumors. Charles Johnson is going to be re-signing with the Panthers, and they're also trying to reignite the flame with Julius Peppers, who, of course, they drafted back in the day. He's a free agent, said he wants to play. He's definitely getting up there in age. A little drop of production the last couple of years with Green Bay, but maybe a return to Carolina would be a good, fun story. And the LA Rams are listening to trade proposals for cornerback Tremaine Johnson. They did franchise tag him for the second year in a row now. I'm kind of surprised they would be looking to trade him, seeing as how they let Janoris Jenkins walk in free agency to go to the Giants last year. He's really their only decent player in that secondary now because, I mean, the Rams' defense has always been great, especially that front.
Right.
But the secondary is so bad and banged up. I mean, a lot of teams are able to have success. So they're looking for trade proposals for Johnson. I mean, he'd probably cost a lot, especially since he's going to be making $16.75 million this year as he's on the franchise tag.
Yeah, because the second year you get a little more. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so they're going to probably have to get a lot for him, and the team's going to have to gamble on a lot of money, seeing as how they probably have to have him maybe sign a long-term deal if they're going to even entertain the option of trading for him. But so we'll have to wait and see. And then really quickly, today starts pro days as well in college. I know Alabama's pro days today as well as Oklahoma. So Joe Mixon, getting a lot of hype, was not at the Combine because of his domestic violence issues in 2014. He met with 4 teams today, the Bengals, the Browns, the Lions, and the Saints. Anthony, I don't have any issue with drafting Joe Mixon. I would do it if I was an organization. The only thing is you're going to have some bad publicity because of what happened in 2014. And that video that went out that we've all seen, that was just, I mean,
right.
We've seen some pretty bad videos in the day, but I think that's probably the worst one. I wouldn't have any issue drafting him, though. I mean, that happened 3 years ago. It seemed like the kid really put it behind him. Had a great season at Oklahoma last year. He's quick. He's dynamic. A good pass catcher out of the backfield. I think he'd make a big impact, and I wouldn't have any issue taking him.
So it's 2 parts, right? It's the number one part of attrition, right? Whether you actually feel bad for what you did, or at least you can make us believe that you feel bad for it, because who really knows how anybody feels. It's making us believe that you feel bad for what you did, a la Ray Rice, but the problem with Ray Rice was the production part of it. But Joe Mixon, we saw in Oklahoma, he was actually really good. So if you can come out and basically say, like, look, I understand what's on video. I can't change what's on that video. I'm really sorry about what happened in that video. I want to move on, but, like, just make us understand, like, I will never do that again. I'm really sorry. Kind of do that whole thing, right? Make us understand that you actually feel sorry for it. And at that point, will people still be mad? Yes, obviously, because the video's out there and the video proves more than anything else that, you know, this will stay with you probably for the rest of your career. But if you can be productive, right, because the difference between Ray Rice and Greg Hardy. Basically, each of them had one but not the other. Greg Hardy had the talent, but he didn't seem at all sorry for what he did. He basically was just like, yeah, whatever, it happened, whatever. And Ray Rice seemed really sorry for what he did, but he wasn't productive. But Joe Mixon seems to be a little bit of both, and it'll be an interesting thing to figure out how this works going forward, right? Is he going to be someone like a Michael Vick, who seemed really sorry for what he did, was still productive, but it didn't matter where he went, whether he was in Pittsburgh, whether it was in Philadelphia, wherever he was, people were still mad at him because it's an emotional thing, right? It's something where it's like, oh, we love dogs, and that hits you in a place where you're going to be mad about it for a very long period of time. Or if he does enough things, if he does enough outreach programs, if he does enough, you know, charity work, do we eventually say, like, okay, look, I understand that's in his past, but he seems like a different guy now? It would be interesting to see how that goes.
I think it all depends on really where he goes, because I think if he can go to a perfect scenario, like for me, a team that doesn't need him but would fit their system fantastic is New England, because he's literally Deion Lewis, he's James White 2.0. He's the same exact player, but they already have two guys like that, so it's not going to be a need for them. But that'd be a perfect scenario, you know what I mean? A guy like that who can return kicks, return punts, stay quiet, because that's the organization that they do there, with the exception of Gronk.
Right.
And it'd be a perfect fit. So I think it really depends on where he goes.
Problem with
the team that can reel him in.
Problem with the Patriots is you've already had a serial killer on your roster, and you had somebody who was literally, you know, drove drunk and hit somebody a few years back, and Dante Stallworth. Like, you've had a few things, and the fact that everyone hates the Patriots, that may not be the best for him.
You know where I think he's honestly going to go?
Where's that?
Dallas.
I mean,
I feel like Jerry Jones will draft him. Jerry Jones deals with all the knuckleheads.
Yeah, but they already got Zeke. Like, I don't think you want any kind of controversy with that, though. Like, I get what you're saying, yeah,
He'd
but
be
like
a perfect third down back and just like pass catcher out of the backfield.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a little guy. I don't see him being that every down back. I see him being that like shifty, receiving back out of the backfield, you know, that kind of CJ Spiller type of player. So
right, yeah, and that could be the case. It's just, yeah, he's got to find the right situation. He's got to find a situation where the people in the locker room are going to kind of insulate him and say, like, okay, we've got you. Like, I understand people are yelling at you, but we've got you. And he can come across as contrite or, you know, whatever, basically seeming like he's learned from what he did.
Right, and I think that'll be the case. And I hope that's the case. I hope the kid has success in the league. And I honestly do think he will if he goes to the right system. Have to wait and see. The NFL draft is April 27th. We'll take our first break of the show. After the break, we're talking NBA news. Russell Westbrook scores a career high, although the Thunder did lose to the Portland Trailblazers. And Dirk Nowitzki is the sixth player in the 30,000-point club. Coming up next here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Russell Westbrook scores 58 points, although the Thunder did lose this night to the Portland Trailblazers at home, 126-121. Russ played 36 minutes and had 39 shots. And he had 16 free throw attempts.
I love him so much.
It's literally like he's playing a game of NBA 2K.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, he had 9 assists. He only had 3 rebounds, so kind of hurting his rebound numbers for that triple-double average. But he had 9 assists. There's no one else on the team that took more than 9 shots, and that was Victor Oladipo, 5 of 9 for 16 points.
Like, it's... So here's the thing with Westbrook, right? He is obviously ridiculously talented. He trusts nobody else on that team. He took 30 more shots than the next guy. 30!
Yes, like it's not like he played all 48 minutes. He played 36. He sat for 12. He sat for a whole quarter.
Right. Let's say he sat for 3 minutes of each quarter. Like, that's enough time for other teams to, do things or whatever. You get 9 shots for Oladipo, which honestly, he's probably the next person on the team that you would trust to do any kind of offensive things. I guess you could say Enes Kanter, but you basically do the thing where you dump the ball down to him down low. He kind of does a couple, shakes or whatever, does a jump hook. There's no one on.
Really well last night, though.
Right.
18 minutes, 11 points, 7 rebounds, shot 5 of 6.
There's nobody else on that team that you necessarily trust, or I guess less that he trusts or whatever, to do anything with the ball. It's one thing if he drives to the basket and kicks out for a 3, fine. But as far as just giving them the ball and trust them to create their own shot, maybe Oladipo, but Oladipo was trying to do that in Orlando and they didn't make the playoffs doing that. At least with the Thunder, they're going to make the playoffs this year with the winning record in the Western Conference. But God, it's just I don't even.
Okay, but look, Russell Westbrook is probably the best person at going to the basket in the league.
Sure.
You can't tell me that you can't drive to the basket and one of these big men is not open. Steven Adams played 29 minutes. He took 1 shot.
Yes.
Taj Gibson played 23 minutes. He took 2 shots. You can't tell me one of those guys isn't standing there hi, yeah, I'm wide open because you're getting double teamed. Hi, hello.
I mean, that's fair, but I also got to think that with everything with this, he's trying to give them the ball, or at least he's trying to do something like that. Because I don't think Westbrook's literally going out there every single time. It's just I got this, I'm shooting this, and everyone else be damned. Right?
I think he is.
I think he
played
tried
36 minutes, had 39 shots. He's taking over a field goal a minute.
He also had 9 assists, so he had that.
He has the ball in his hands every play.
9 is a lot, though. If he would have had 3 assists, I'd have been with you. But 9 assists, that's at least...
The team had 16 assists.
Yes.
The rest of the team had 7.
Yes.
7.
And
they're probably all to Westbrook's
scoring. So that means he's trying. That means he's trying to get other people the ball. That accounts for, let's just say everything was a 2-pointer. That counts for 18. That counts for 76 points. He's doing all he can.
I will say one thing for Westbrook. He only had 4 turnovers last night, which is
exactly
probably low for him.
And he shot 21 to 39. For 39 shots, if you do over 50%, that's really good because he could have easily gone something 16 for 39 Kobe style. But, he went over 50%. He had 9 assists. Look, I'm not saying he had a great game because they lost the game and stuff like that and whatever, but
this happens all the time, though. It seems like every time someone scores 50, their team loses because no one else on the team is even remotely productive.
Well, we saw this a couple of nights ago with the Cavaliers and the Heat, right? With LeBron and Kyrie basically shooting a lot, getting 60-something points out of the, I think, 90, 95 points that they scored.
And then Deion Waiters killed them.
And also, nobody on the Cavs could do anything outside of those 2 guys, right? It's kind of one of those things. We saw that all the time in the years past with the Thunder. It was basically... All right, Russ is going to shoot. Okay, KD's going to shoot. Okay, Russ is going to shoot. Okay, Russ is going to shoot again. Okay, KD's got it. Okay, KD's got it. Going back and forth, and everyone else is kind of sitting there are we going to get the ball? No, they're going to shoot it again. And there it goes. Hey, they made it. All right, cool. Let's go back on defense kind of thing, right? And I'm assuming that's how they play over in Oklahoma City. They're kind of watching Russ is going to shoot. He's going to shoot it. I bet you he's going to shoot it. There it goes. Oh, crap, he missed. Okay, now we get it back on defense kind of thing. They're just kind of watching it at a certain point because he's fantastic, but no one else on the team has any idea they're getting the ball. Unless, he does a thing where he drives to the basket kind of thing. They're just kind of yeah, we're probably just going to sit here in the corner, not going to get a shot.
Yeah, there's no way. I mean, it's literally Russell Westbrook and 4 other guys on the floor. So also in the NBA last night, the Washington Wizards are on the road taking on Phoenix Suns, and they won 131-127. John Wall, 25 points and 14 assists, and one Suns gorilla diving on the floor during the game. I don't know what he was thinking. I think he probably thought it was a timeout or something.
Right.
He just kind of lost track. But luckily, no one tripped or anything. He was away from the play, and the gorilla is okay. So let's get to some really good basketball talk now. So the Mavericks played the Lakers last night. The Mavericks win at home, 1-22 to 1-11. Dirk Nowitzki needed 20 points in the game to become the 6th player in NBA history to score 30,000 points. Well, it seemed like the Mavericks really were okay, we're going to just give you the ball until you get it. Because he got his 20th point in the second quarter. So he played really well, too. He shot 9 of 13. It's almost like he got that 30,000-point milestone and was like, okay, I'm kind of going to take a rest now. Because he only played 29 minutes.
Right.
He said after the game that he celebrated by having a Bud Light in the locker room. So, he played really well, 9 of 13, 25 points, 11 rebounds. But Dirk Nowitzki now the 6th player in NBA history with 30,000 points. He joined some of the likes of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Karl Malone, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, and Wilt Chamberlain. And he's also only the 3rd player to do it all with one franchise at the time. So Kobe and Karl Malone are the other 2. Dirk Nowitzki, in my eyes, definitely the greatest international player of all time. I don't really count Kobe because he was born in Italy, international player because he's American.
Right.
So I'll say Dirk Nowitzki, the greatest international player of all time. And for me, really, the legacy of Dirk is how he kind of changed the game. Because he was literally the first ever stretch 4.
Yeah.
That he totally changed the game at 7 foot tall. I realized there were some big guys that were shooting on the perimeter, like guys like Chris Mullin out in the Golden State with the Warriors. But Dirk Nowitzki, at 7 foot tall, to do the things he was doing, just was never heard of when he came out in the NBA. So for me, kind of just changed the whole demeanor and the landscape of how big men are nowadays. Because it seems like the true back-to-the-basket big men is literally extinct. You have guys like DeAndre Jordan, maybe even Al Horford, although he kind of steps out a little bit. You guys see Cousins, he's 6'10", he's like 280 pounds, and he's shooting three-pointers.
Right.
You have Anthony Davis shooting three-pointers, all these European guys like Porzingis shooting three-pointers. The big man position has totally changed. I think that's all because of how Dirk sort of paved that way.
Yeah, and someone like, say, DeAndre Jordan, he doesn't necessarily have the game, like the back-to-the-basket kind of thing, like a Tim Duncan had or whatever, doing stuff like that. Everyone else you're talking about, they can at least shoot threes. Boogie's probably the closest thing to a back-to-the-basket guy, but he's, over the last few years, decided to start shooting some three-pointers and stuff like that. Porzingis, you talk about. Dirk is probably the best foreign-born player. Someone like Hakeem Olajuwon probably is right up there as well, but the problem with him is we know him a lot as basically being Americanized, right? Because he went to Houston, as far as the University of Houston, then he was with the Rockets, so you know him more as that, but he was literally born in a different country and played soccer and stuff like that in a different country, so he has that as well, but Dirk literally came from Germany to the States, right? He was kind of from the different place and came here to where at least Hakeem, we saw him in college in the States, but Dirk, he is, it's an anomaly that we probably won't see as well again, because as good as someone like a Porzingis is, or as good as a Boogie or something like that, Dirk has basically ticked off every single check mark you can pretty much want, right? He's been league MVP. He had the redemption story of basically making it to the finals and losing. He had the redemption of losing the first round when he was the number 1 overall seed. Then he got the ring at the end, was the finals MVP when he got there, 30,000 points. Best player in Mavericks history, period, end of story. I understand that you had good players before, like you had Michael Finley or Steve Nash, whoever else. You've had a lot of good players, but he's the best that's ever played for the Mavericks by a long shot. He's been as loyal to one franchise as anybody ever. As much as you want to say, Kobe stayed 20 years for the Lakers. Yeah, at the end, he basically said, I want all my money. And he also ran Shaq out of town and did a couple other things. No shade on Kobe. I'm just saying, Dirk, as far as he
took a pay cut.
He's been taking pay cuts for a while. He has basically been what Dallas needed at the time, right? You needed the MVP candidate, got it. You need somebody that could be the number 1 guy in a championship team, you got it. You need someone that can kind of, as your career starts winding down, take a little bit less money so we can try and recruit other talent. He did that, didn't exactly bring the people that he wanted, but he at least tried it. And Mark Cuban loves him. We always talk about...
he could pretty much thank him for everything, because without him, they're not winning the rings.
Yeah, no, exactly. And we talk a lot of time about Jerry Jones and how he loves Tony Romo. Same thing with Cuban. Cuban loves Nowitzki. Cuban will give Nowitzki whatever the hell job he wants at the end, right? Whatever. It's you want to get my own yacht? Cool. I got another one coming here. This one's for you. Oh, you want this job that pays you X amount of money per year? Got it. Dirk is the Mavericks, and once he leaves, we've seen the Spurs kind of transition away from Tim Duncan, because that's the Spurs, and they kind of have that whole infrastructure of just basically, we're going to go from the best defensive player / offensive player in the history of the Spurs and Tim Duncan to the best defensive player in the game right now, Kawhi Leonard. We kind of transition into that kind of thing like that. The Mavericks don't necessarily have that, and it's going to be interesting to see how they actually go about it now without basically the guy? Because after next year, he's probably done, right? He said he wants to play for a 20th season, basically get that nice round number to kind of end his career and kind of ride off in the sunset, stuff like that. But once he's gone, I mean, there is nobody else on the team that is anywhere near as talented as he is right now, or anybody you could hope will be, the workhorse number one guy going forward.
No, definitely. It's definitely going to be a transitional period. I kind of compared to the team they played last night with being the Lakers. I mean, they lost Kobe, and even with the Kobe at the end, it was like, well, they're kind of irrelevant.
Right.
And the same thing with the Mavericks. They're currently 27-36, which isn't terrible.
At least they're close to the playoffs. Yogi Ferrell's
been a decent point guard since they moved on with him instead of Darren Williams. They're like I said, they're close to the playoffs. Then once Dirk is done, it's like, well, okay, now it's time to rebuild everything because we lost our franchise for the last 20 years. And the thing I'll always remember with Dirk is a couple things. Number one, how he was booed so bad on draft day. Right. And it's like, well, do you regret that now? Dude. And Milwaukee, who drafted him and then traded him on draft day to Dallas. And then the same thing with Phoenix, who drafted Steve Nash and then traded him on draft day to Dallas. I mean, look at Don Nelson, okay? He was the GM and the coach at the time. He made 2 draft day trades to acquire Dirk Nowitzki and Steve Nash. How did that work out? Pretty damn good.
Right.
So, the thing I remember with Dirk is how he was booed so bad on draft day, and obviously we have seen the career he's done. And he literally trademarked a shot, that fadeaway 1-footer where 7 foot tall, it's literally impossible to block, and you have to just kind of hope that he misses it because there's no way you're getting your hand up. Kind of like how Kareem did with the sky hook. Same thing with Dirk with that fall-away, fade-away jumper. Mm-hmm. Same exact thing. So, congrats to Dirk. And really, I'd say now it's Nowitzki and Paul Pierce who are kind of holding on to that legacy of, the mid to late 90s greats. Because I was just thinking about it, people in the generation of Nowitzki. You have Pierce, you have Garnett, Ray Allen, Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan. Those are the greats of that generation.
Right.
The only ones you have left now are Pierce and you have Dirk.
And he's the only one that's doing it semi...
Yeah, Pierce is basically done.
Pierce is done, and Vince Carter still plays, but Vince Carter is a backup and doesn't get that many points tonight. I guess Dirk's kind of going down that list too, and he's also injured this year, so his production has been the same as it was last year. But he's the only one that's any kind of, producing for his team, because you talk about everyone else that's basically retired. The only other ones that are still in the league, Paul Pierce, but he doesn't play. Ask Draymond Green about that. And you've got Vince Carter, and I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that's
I mean, you can throw McGrady in there, too.
Yeah, but I'm saying he doesn't play. He's retired to this point, and the last time he played was a really backup role.
I mean, I don't think there is one.
From the, even call it 2000, 2001, I can't think of anybody that's still playing on a team that does this. I guess you could say something like Ron Artest, but his stuff was he's a backup now. There's nobody that's productive that's still playing. He's the last guy because that's kind of how his game has aged, right? Because he's more of a jump shooter, he doesn't have to do anything near the basket, so that game will age a lot better than somebody who Garnett was always kind of a back to the basket and getting banged on a little bit down low. Dirk's always been the guy that's been shooting from 15, 18 feet, so that helps you age with time. And he's, honestly, like I said, probably has 1 year left in him, but he's, like you said, I don't think you'll see anybody like him as far as how talented he is and being able to drag a team to the playoffs year after year like he was doing.
Yeah, they're definitely dying. I mean, the generation's over. Now you can kind of throw in the early 2000s in there with the 2003 draft class with the Dwayne Wades and LeBron Jameses of the world who are going to be that next step. Carmelo Anthony. But so Dirk Nowitzki's 6th player in history with 30,000 points. Congrats to one of my favorite players, the big German, Dirk Nowitzki. We'll take our last break of the show. After the break, we're going to talk a little college basketball. We have the conference tournaments going on. Obviously, the big ones at the end of the weekend. I'll be looking forward to that. But all the mid-majors, it's great to see some of the mid-majors. But is the system flawed with how they let the conference tournament champion in the big dance, not the regular season champion? I think it is. We'll talk about it after the break here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Do Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Thank you for returning to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Talking a little college basketball here. We have the conference tournaments rolling on. Last night, Gonzaga topped St. Mary's to win the West Coast Conference tournament, although both teams are getting in regardless. Now the question is Gonzaga at 32-1 going to get the number 1 seed out there in the West? I think it all depends on what UCLA does. I think if UCLA wins the Pac-12 title, then I think they will be the number 1 seed. I mean, difference is like 2 games as far as win-loss record. UCLA has a lot more quality wins. But
right.
So last night, the Northern Kentucky Norse, and yes, the Norse, I had no idea what this is, and it's like a medieval Scandinavian like god sort of creature.
The Norse god, yeah.
And then they played the Milwaukee Panthers. The Norse won 59-53 in the Horizon League Championship Final. They finished at 24-10 and 12-6 in conference play. But here's the story where we're going to sort of flip it here. The Milwaukee Panthers came into the game at 11-23 and finished 4-14 in conference play. They were 1 win away from the NCAA tournament, which they would have been 12-23 in the Big Dance, pretty much guaranteeing themselves a number 16 seed, and then probably get spanked by 40 against a team like Kansas or North Carolina, which are going to be number 1 seeds. So I don't want to say luckily, because I guess I'm upset for Milwaukee. It'd be a great story, like, oh my God, they only had 12 wins and they made the Big Dance. But because of how all these mid-majors work, the conference tournament champion gets the automatic bid and not the team that has the best record in the regular season. The only league that used to do that was the Ivy League, because they did not have a postseason tournament. That has changed this year, which is the first year. The Ivy League is going to have, or is having, a conference tournament champion. That team will be in the Big Dance. It used to be the team that finished with the best record in the regular season, which seemed to always be Harvard. And they had a couple upsets in the first round last few years, so Harvard still have a chance to get there this year. But now there's a conference tournament champion. We seem to have this debate every single year about how the system is flawed, but nothing ever changes, and it's simply because there's too much money in these conference championship tournaments.
Yeah, and I don't even care as much about it. Like, I understand that, as like, just looking at it, it looks kind of weird when you see a team basically with, an under 500 record and a big under 500 record. It's not like they were, 12-13 or something like that, and they made it in. That'd be like 12-23 or something like that. Like, I get that doesn't look great, but I mean, also, how rare is that something like that'll happen? Like, it's not like that's going to happen like every single year. Like, all these conferences are going to have below 500 teams. If that happens, then yeah, fine, adjust things, whatever. But I mean, like, if that can happen, and you ended up getting wins over all those teams that you weren't supposed to get it, I mean, good for you. Go have fun with it. Like, like you said, like, whether it's you or, the Norse, like, you're going to get your face caved in anyways by Kansas or Gonzaga or UCLA or somebody. So, I mean, what is it going to hurt necessarily? And, for the people that were that bad and got into the playoffs, it's a nice story. I
mean, it happens every year, though. Like, last year, it was Monmouth.
Sure.
Monmouth was, like, the darling of it all. Finished with, like, 27 wins, I think, or, like, 28 wins, but then they lost their conference tournament.
Right.
And everyone's like, oh, they have to get an at-large bid, and they didn't get it. And everyone's like, oh, how did Syracuse get it? But then, obviously, Syracuse goes on to the Final Four, and it's like, well, I guess you have to kind of say they deserved it in a way. Although Syracuse, to me, are always a matchup nightmare in the tournament because they play that 2-3 zone, and it's hard to adjust because you're not seeing that every single night out.
Right.
Like, for instance, the Missouri Valley Champion Conference or the champion of the Missouri Valley Conference is South Dakota State, okay? They finished at 18-16. But because they won their conference tournament, they got into the Big Dance. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I mean, a team that's 18-16 probably shouldn't be in the last 68 to win a national title. And there are instances where upsets happen. I mean, we saw George Mason make a run to the Final Four. We saw VCU make a run to the Final Four. Butler was in the national title game 2 years in a row. So we see this thing happen where the mid-majors make those runs, and it's a great story, and you're like, hey, maybe they deserve to get in. But for me, I'd much rather just see the best 64 teams, regardless of conference, in the thing. But because of how much money this thing makes, and even the conference tournaments, how much money they make, it's not going to change.
And I get the conference tournaments part matter, right? I get that part is a big thing because you want to throw all these tournaments together and you get it on TV and you get the people coming in for ticket sales. Like, I get how money plays a role in that. I'm not saying it doesn't. But at the same time, you say you want the best 68 teams. And I understand that on a certain level. But also, if you had the best 68 teams, you also have the situation where, A, you're never going to get the best 68 teams because that's all random. You could say, like, oh, well,
it's subjective.
Everything's subjective. And once you get in there, like you said, oh, I don't think Syracuse should have been in there. I'm not saying you said that, but other people were like, oh, how'd they get in? And then they made it, pretty far in the tournament because it's so random, the tournament itself, because it's one game where you basically are relying on college kids not to be college kids, right? Like, you're expecting them not to be emotional or have something that'll ruin their day, right? Like, anybody can have something bad happen to them ruin their day. If you're in college, your girlfriend breaks up with you, all of a sudden that's a bad day. Now go play in this tournament game, right? A lot of things can mess with your head as far as like playing in the tournament. And, all it takes is like one team that has this really, really, really good shooter, and all of a sudden he goes, 7 of 10 from 3, and now you lose the game. Like, a lot of things can happen in the tournament, so having the best 68 teams doesn't necessarily matter. And it's like a good story anywhere else for the team. And like I said, unless you're VCU or George Mason or whoever who's going to get that kind of Cinderella run all the way to the Final Four, it's not going to matter if your team was, 24 and 10 or 10 and 24.
Yeah, I get it, and it's not going to change, but I just kind of hate how the system is because teams totally get left out. It's almost like the whole entire season doesn't matter, and it's just these last 3 games in the conference tournament that really determine your whole season.
And that part's fair. I get that.
That's like the whole thing that I have a problem with.
Yeah, I can't exactly argue with that. Like, I totally get the fact that it basically, delegitimizes your whole regular season, right? Like, you can be the best team, and at the end of it, it's like, well, you lost the game, now you got to go home.
Yeah, it's kind of like everything just comes down to one game, and the previous, 25 mean literally nothing. So that's my problem with it, and it's not going to change. But nevertheless, the conference tournament is still my favorite thing in sports because of the uncertainty. We've talked about all these mid-majors making deep runs, and we have Florida Gulf Coast a few years back going to the Sweet 16. They're back in the tournament this year. Ought to be fun to see what they do. Maybe they can create some sort of spark again. But, we'll have to wait and see. Selection Sunday is this Sunday. Then we have, I guess they call it the first round now, the first 4. That's going to be on Tuesday and Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And then we have Thursday, Friday when the real tournament starts kicking in. So always going to update you here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Going to do some brackets, and it'll be all fun and dandy. We're going to be taking a 24-hour break because we're leaving for the day. I'd like to thank you for listening. My name is Ben.
And I'm Anthony.
We leave you here with Tim Tebow making his spring training appearance today for the Mets, going up against Rick Porcello, the reigning AL Cy Young winner of the Boston Red Sox. How do you think Tebow does?
That's going to go well for him.
I don't think it matters who pitches. It wouldn't go well for him.
If you're Porcello, you want to strike him out every single time, right? You don't want to pop up. You don't want to ground out. You want to strike him out every single time, right?
I would definitely want to, just gas him.
You want to embarrass him a little bit, and it's like, oh, Tim Tebow, you think you're going to get hot off me?
Watch him hit a homer. Watch him, just touch them all,
Yes.
That'd be fantastic.
I would love that.
Anyways, that's going to be it for the show. Thank you for listening, guys, here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, and we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.